Woman! My sandwich! Woman! My beer! Now! Harder.
Jeez. Is that the new God of War game? How do I pre-order it?
Place your soiled garments within me!
I like the graphics, and this gameplay is top tier. And you know, in a world where every male-centered franchise is gender-swapping their main characters and making them ugly in the sequel, finally we have something that's more true to life. I mean, there's a side of modern gaming that just constantly releases garbage, yet wants us to think that it's gold. Well, you know, maybe some of that's due to BlackRock ESG funding for video games, but then again, you can look back and see that, well, Avatar was kind of woke and Katara was openly a feminist, but that show was still good. So then you realize what's more likely happening here is bad writers sucking up to people with deep pockets, who are then given tons of money because they're willing to promote the message. Because the uncomfortable reality is that if these writers or designers were actually good, they would be able to convince us over to their viewpoint. Fortunately, they aren't though, so we won't be adopting their trash values anytime soon. That being said, there's a reason why their stories aren't compelling, and it's because of a lack of fundamental communication skills that are necessary to get people to like you. In fact, the primary reason why people don't like their stories is because their characters are unlikable, and no one's going to watch the journey of someone who they don't find interesting. The question is, why aren't they interesting? But before that, recently a jury ordered Meta and YouTube to pay millions for their role in designing and promoting addictive platforms. They knew their apps could contribute to anxiety, depression, and body image issues, but did not share those risks while prioritizing profits. If you or your child spent years growing up on social media and experienced serious mental health struggles, you should hear this. Morgan & Morgan is stepping up to hold these platforms accountable for the harm they caused. You can use the link in my description or scan the QR code to take a short quiz to see if you qualify for a case. Alright, so some of you may have heard about what's likely to become Game of the Year for 2026, and that's an indie game called Mixtape.
Where's the gameplay? Hey, I'm not doing anything. Hands-free, by the way. The game plays itself.
Right, so Indie Game of the Year Mixtape has decided to subvert expectations by designing a game where your input doesn't matter for over 90% of it. You see this whole parody of that scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Well, it's actually from a video where a player has decided to press 0 buttons and she still succeeds at the challenge anyway. In fact, here's a player who intentionally tries to lose and nope, it just Prince of Persia style rewinds you and you're good. With training wheels like that, I'm sure respected gaming journalism outlets like Kotaku love this game. What a shock.
And then there's the gameplay, which honestly, would you guys have guessed, there's really not much to talk about here. I mean, quite literally every single game action is just press buttons just because. This is such a key jingling simulator. Make the character tap to a song just because. Float the character into some boxes just because. The entire thing just feels like they put those elements into the game just so they could technically qualify this as a video game, likely because these guys wouldn't be able to cut it making a movie, which honestly makes a lot of sense when I look back on some of these positive reviews as, well, it does feel like we have a lot of wannabe film critics trying to review a wannabe filmmaker's game.
Not only all of that, but also this game has a keen eye for detail when it comes to the technology of the 90s.
Watch this. This is just a few minutes into the game. You pull up the cassette to do a pencil rewind. They spin it the wrong fucking way, dude.
Rewind it. Are you kidding me?
Oh.
Pencil in and turn to the left. It messes it up.
They made a game called Mixtape, and they got the mixtape wrong.
The whole premise has ADHD levels of continuity because it's called Mixtape, but half the time the main character is listening to a CD player. Why didn't they call it soundtrack or playlist or use a Walkman? The game is just basically a 2-hour greatest hits track of the author's favorite copyrighted music, and also there's like a coming-of-age story going on in the background. So those were most of people's big gripes about Mixtape, along with pointing out that it is conveniently just long enough for people to not be able to return it on Steam. I also saw people making criticisms of the characters saying that they were lame, but I didn't really see anyone go deep into these specific storytelling reasons for why these characters suck and why this story sucks. So because of that, let's get into the real challenge of this game, which is trying to review it without being copyright claimed by YouTube's Content ID because of all the dumb background music. Now, I do want to say that there are psychological reasons for why stories are compelling. On Screen is a book that talks about that called The Science of Storytelling, and granted, this can kind of seem like specialized insider knowledge that's not really applicable to regular people who aren't writers, but ultimately, good storytelling is just good communication skills, and good communication requires that you're good at telling stories. talking about how your vacation was or what happened to you yesterday are stories that you can learn how to tell in interesting ways. And speaking of stories, let's talk about what Mixtape is about.
I want to say something lighthearted, so I say, I bet one of us dies this time.
Very Borderlands of you.
It insists upon itself, Lois.
So in Mixtape, you follow the main character Stacy, who is basically that annoying person from high school who is overly judgmental about people's music tastes.
I can't work in the fucking kayak shack. The radio's on smooth hits 24/7. I drown myself.
Stacy's goal is to become like a music producer or something. I know that's not the correct term, but her dream job is very much something that you would only know about if you worked on a movie set. You might as well have just said that she wants to become a key grip. What regular person cares to know what that is? Anyway, Stacy wants to become a person who professionally chooses soundtracks for movies or whatever. And during the game, we're seeing her last day with her friends in her hometown before she leaves to fly to New York to chase her dream. By the way, the reason that certain parts of the clips that I'm using are very quiet is because I had to cut out all the copyrighted songs. So note that during these scenes, the author's favorite 80s music is playing.
So you fly to New York, you give this woman your mixtape, and what, she just hires you?
After she listens to the mixtape, yeah. I'll become the world's foremost music supervisor.
What's a music supervisor?
Imagine before you.
Yeah, I don't care what that is. Stacy is joined by her friends Cassandra and Slater, who are mad that she's ditching a road trip that they were supposed to go on. And basically, the quick outline of the story is that all the main characters are graduating high school and going in different directions. But tonight, a popular girl is throwing a huge party, and for this game, we join our heroes on a quest to get alcohol for that party, which is a great storyline. I remember loving it in 2007 when the movie Superbad did this.
So you're coming to my party tonight, right? Because it's like fully on.
Yeah, why? Should I not come? Because I could think of other shit.
Oh, no, I want you to come. I just, you said something earlier about like a fake ID or something, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna get one, for show.
Can you get us booze?
Yeah, they basically copied a lot from Superbad, very noticeably, by the way. They even had the same friend breakup in Act 4.
You bailed on me this morning when Jesse spat on me, and you're bailing on me next year.
It finally comes out.
We were supposed to go to college together, Evan.
This was supposed to be our last night together. Just us three.
Don't act like you want us all together. All you talk about is leaving.
I mean, this is extreme levels of copying someone else's homework.
Seth, me and Evan are rooming together next year at college. What's the big deal? I didn't tell you because I thought...
Because you're a backstabber and you lied to your best friend?
Nice to see you. God, I hate Jenny fucking Goodspeed.
Jenny's coming with us to LA.
What?
And the reason I point that out is because one of the most fundamental aspects of storytelling is change, or subverting expectations. As in, as a non-writer, if you're telling someone how your weekend or your vacation went, the part you should start with is the part that includes something that they wouldn't expect. And really, this is a lesson that Hollywood should learn as they keep repackaging the same formulaic dog shit over and over again, trying to sell it as something new. That industry is so full of superhero films and remakes that I don't think I've been to an actual theater in 2 years.
Chaw.
Cha.
Chaw.
Cha.
Cha.
So the base of your plot is going to be the characters in your story. Who you're talking about has to be compelling, otherwise people will not listen, and because human psychology is geared towards noticing negatives, probably for survival, it is important that you create interest in a character by showing their flaws. In fact, every good story will lay out a lie or a set of lies that their main characters believe, and their story arc is discovering what that lie is and changing their behavior so they can succeed. For example, Harry Potter, as a kid who spent the first 10 years of his life with no friends, believes that he must solve all of his problems by himself, and it is shown during each book that he learns to succeed through the power of friendship. With that, we have a person who is relatable, struggles, and then succeeds when he uncovers the lie that he doesn't need others and changes his behavior by accepting help from his friends. Thus, the audience can learn the importance of friendship from the story. However, in Mixtape, the characters have their beliefs and they're just objectively correct the entire time, and that's it.
The next track is Just Like Honey by the Jesus and Mary Chain. You're listening to More Than This by Roxy Music. This is The Touch by Stan Bush, originally released in 1986 on the Transformers animated movie soundtrack. It's the cheese, the stuffed crust, the quattro formaggio.
The main character, Stacy, is a music know-it-all that the writers are using as an avenue to fail one of the most fundamental storytelling principles, which is show don't tell. I don't even get to listen to the music and decide if I think it's good. I just get told how to feel by the writers. Now, if it actually was good, then that is a natural conclusion that I should come to on my own after hearing it. Also, who is this game even for? I'm not exactly young and I don't recognize most of these song references. I can only imagine how lost someone would be if they were currently the actual age of the main characters, which is who coming-of-age films are supposed to appeal to. But you have to be like 45 plus to enjoy this movie that was kind of already made a bunch of times in the 90s and the 2000s. Even Stacy's not original. She's just Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in Almost Famous.
Did you know that the letter by the box tops was 1 minute and 58 seconds long? It means nothing. Nil. But it takes them less than 2 minutes to accomplish what Jethro Tull takes hours to not accomplish. You see, this is fatuous, pseudo-blubber. Or the Doors. Jim Morrison? He's a drunken buffoon, posing as a poet.
I like the Doors.
Give me the Guess Who. Come on, they got the courage to be drunken buffoons. Iggy Pop! Amen!
I feel like this character is intended to be unlikable. He just says that your music is bad and his music is good, followed by not really explaining why. By the way, here's an indie band that I like. Listen to it or you're not cool. But it's fine to have a know-it-all character. In Harry Potter, Hermione is a know-it-all character, but the reason that people like her and hate Stacy is because Stacy suffers zero consequences for her know-it-all behavior and learns nothing new. Meanwhile, Hermione is punished multiple times throughout the Harry Potter series for that behavior, because in real life, people hate it when someone has to constantly display how smart they are. But like I said, when it comes to Mixtape, there's no lessons learned at all. And also, kind of another problem with a lot of modern media is that it lacks a strong antagonist, or oftentimes they don't even have an antagonist at all. And what I mean by that in terms of being likable and human psychology or communication skills is that stories are a game. You have players, these players have a goal, and most importantly, you have someone or something trying to stop the players from reaching their goal. That's the antagonist. In video games, it could be a different player, it could be a monster, it could be the environment. Like a giant cliff or a thunderstorm can be an antagonist, and the interesting part is talking about how the player wins or loses if it's a tragedy. What actions does this person take in the face of a challenge? However, when you don't have an antagonist, it's a little bit like watching a soccer game with no opposing team. And I think the main part where Mixtape consistently fails is the lack of any challenge, which brings us to our second boring character, Cassandra. We're not going to talk about the guy character, nothing happens with him. Not even like a will they, won't they relationship with the main character, Stacy. They kind of tease that, they kind of maybe make this character a competitor to Stacy, but ultimately, they go nowhere with it. Anyway, Cassandra is the newer friend in the group who is the straight-A student who is good at sports and just perfect at everything. However, her friendship with Stacy and Slater has begun to turn her into a degenerate. Cassandra's father, a police officer, notices that, is opposed to it, and thus, we have our antagonist.
Stacy, Van, could you step outside a moment? You're smoking pot.
No!
Who gave you this? Those two out there?
No!
We've given you so much trust. But I can't bring myself to give you any more. You're staying home tonight.
What?
Bill Robbie down at the liquor store said kids have been in and out of there all day. Something's happening tonight, and I don't want you part of it.
You can't! This is our last night together. I told you about this!
No! You will stay home, goddammit! You leaving tomorrow?
Yeah?
If I find you at that party, and I will find that party, you'll spend 24 hours in detention, I promise you that. You'll be walking to New York.
This is great, right? A classic 90s story. Teenage kids versus annoying authority figures. And you would think that this is going to create some excellent drama to interest the audience, but nope, nothing happens. Actually, the lack of drama probably kills the only good part of this game, which is the acting. But when the story gets to its final act where everyone goes to the party, Cassandra's dad's goal is to find that party and stop it. At some point, a fire is started in the middle of the woods, Cassandra's dad shows up, and we see a standoff between these two characters.
Daddy, if you trap me here, this will only be the beginnings of my wicked ways. 'Cause I'm angry and I'm wired and I'm fixing for a whole lot of trouble. If you make me stay here, I'm gonna burn the whole fucking place down!
Well, I guess we have ourselves an understanding.
Wow, that was an incredibly easy fight. I guess Cassandra, as a 17-year-old, knows way more than her father, who is just trying to keep her from becoming a druggie. The whole story builds up to this point here, and she is just deemed correct with no challenges or nuances added to her beliefs.
Let me tell you about flat art characters. Flat art character mirrors the player.
The flat art character begins the story already in possession of a truth, a philosophy, and a conviction or an outlook that is complete and doesn't fundamentally change.
Yeah, and it's called shit writing when all of your characters are flat. There's no challenge in this animated film that isn't solved almost instantly by its protagonist. Even the main challenge, which is to find alcohol, is solved instantly. In the story, Stacy's older sister graduates high school and moves away. However, she does show Stacy and her friends a secret cabin in the woods hangout spot that they end up using for years, I guess. And during this story, we find out that the whole time Stacy's sister has been hiding a secret stash of alcohol that they intend to use for the big party that night, but first, they have to piece together a photograph to learn where it is.
It's in the floor?
It's in the floor.
That's it. It was just under the floorboards right in front of the front door with no rug over it, and they never discovered it. You can even see that there's space between the floorboards. They didn't see it by accident. These have to be the dumbest main characters in existence. This reminds me of Ready Player One, where the protagonists have to win some impossible race, and this is how they beat it. You mean to tell me that not one player thought to drive their car backwards? This was quite possibly the most boomer part of that movie, and it's how you tell that it was written by someone who does not understand people who play video games. But as for Mixtape, the reason that you don't like that movie, but you do like the movie that it's copying, Superbad, is because during their journey to find alcohol, they do the most obvious thing first and show you why it didn't work.
Here's the money and the list.
Change is yours. Keep the change. What if I go in there and they turn me down, man?
Then we're in the same exact place that we're in right now.
Holy shit, they busted Fogel.
How did this happen, Evan? Fuck, man.
His dad's gonna fucking kill him.
I'm not even sure if the main characters of Mixtape tried just buying it at the store, which is dumb because they're supposed to be like experts at illegally getting booze. I mean, if they gave a reason for why they couldn't do that, it certainly wasn't memorable. Meanwhile, that moment from Superbad and the setup scene for it is the most referenced part of that movie.
Wait, you changed your name to McLovin? McLovin? What kind of a stupid name is that, Fogel? What, are you trying to be an Irish R&B singer? Oh, they let you pick any name you want when you get down there.
And you landed on McLovin.
Yeah, I was between that and Muhammad.
Now, with all that said, if you were to look at the ratings, you would expect this game to be rated like a 2 or a 3 out of 10 maybe. But for those of you who missed it, I kid you not, every major gaming journalism outlet was giving this game a perfect score. IGN, a website that used to be well respected, gave this a 10 and said it had a masterful sense of style. Keep in mind that a 10 is like Breath of the Wild or Elden Ring levels of quality. Also keep in mind that IGN gave Stellar Blade, a vastly superior game, a 7 out of 10. Not to say that Stellar Blade is perfect, certainly that game has its flaws and places it could have been improved. However, I think the FTC should investigate every single one of these companies that rated Mixtape a 9 or higher, because the chances that these aren't paid reviews are astronomically low. Why isn't the FTC doing their job? The gaming journalism industry has been giving suspiciously high reviews for like 10 years now. There's no way that this is their genuine opinion, and it's against the law to get paid for a promotion and not disclose that to people. There's no way they actually believe stuff like this.
I'm not here to talk shit, but like, I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater yesterday. This was more fun skateboarding than that was.
Right, this piece of crap is more fun to play than Tony Hawk. A game that created people's entire childhoods, a game that actually did a good job at promoting the creator's favorite bands. Meanwhile, double speeding a playthrough of Mixtape is practically torture. This game was so boring.
Mixtape launched to an eye-watering 15,000 players. Sorry, that's 1,500 players before reaching their peak of just over 2,000 players. It was developed by Beethoven and Dinosaur and published by Annapurna Interactive, a subsidiary of Annapurna Pictures, a company that's owned by Megan Ellison, whose father, Larry Ellison, is the 5th richest person in the world that also happened to bail that studio out of bankruptcy back in 2019. Isn't it great when indie games have a golden parachute? Isn't that so common in this games industry? These guys are definitely not going to be beating the allegations of being an industry plant. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Right. Nothing says independent game like being funded by some of the richest people in the world.
There's a lot of very plot-based stories in video games and people do them really well, but we wanted to do something that was more of like a hangout film, something that was more character-based.
Freudian slip there. The developer just admitted that Mixtape was not a video game. That was Johnny Galvatron, by the way, a person whose name is totally not made up for a band that no one knows about. Oh, look, they named Cassandra after one of their songs. There. Now no one can say that I don't do research. because probably the best part of this video was researching the development team, because once you do that, you realize that Stacy is just a gender-swapped self-insert of the head creator.
And like, I just remember being like that obnoxious teenage music fan who would judge you by what bands you listen to. And I remember being in that scene in Melbourne and how cool it was. And that's what Mixtape is about. Just be into shit and like really get into it and annoy people with it. That's the best way to be.
This is peak millennial writing. I mean, yes, your interests are going to be a part of your story, but good writers focus on things that they like, that an audience would be interested in. And when they don't do that, they come off as incredibly cringe.
I don't think I've ever been more embarrassed to be a millennial. And honestly, that's saying something. You know what? As a self-elected representative of my own generation, I would like to issue a public apology to the rest of society.
And when I say millennial writing, I'm saying that these stories are written by people who are highly self-absorbed, don't have any actual friends, and have never really faced any difficult challenges, so they don't know how to write these things. Watch any interview with the guy who made Mixtape, and you can see that he's full of himself.
Hey, interesting fact about Mad Max. Did you know it was directed by Goo Gooman from Death Stranding 2? That joke is niche. Love a Kojima game. Have you met Kojima? I have. He played Mixtape. He gave me 2 thumbs up.
Holy autism. I mean, also Mixtape is written like it was made for fans of Greta Gerwig films. Of course. By the way, I know this video is scripted, but I called the Greta Gerwig thing before I found this moment from the developer. So really, the lesson here in storytelling for when you communicate in your personal life is, if you're wondering which stories people will connect to, then it is stories where you solve problems, preferably ones that are difficult. That's how you interest those who are listening to you. And most importantly, the last key feature of peak millennial writing is the complete lack of mystery. For any story, it is essential that you have some piece of key information that you're withholding from your audience. People get pissed off at spoilers because they want mystery. They want you to lay clues out for them so they can figure out the plot for themselves, because then that turns the story into a game that they can participate in. In fact, if you're trying to be interesting in your personal life, then let me just say that the least interesting people are those who overshare and behave like an open book. You need to have some mystery in your life, preferably mysteries that people want to solve, and then a good story will give you clues along the way. I thought that Mixtape might possibly be engaging in good writing by teasing a relationship between Slater and Stacy that would be revealed at the climax of the story, followed by a "don't leave because I'm in love with you" that would force Stacy to make the difficult decision of, do I chase my dreams and sacrifice love, or do I sacrifice my dreams so I can be in a relationship with my childhood friend? But nope, none of that happens. No difficult choices are ever made in this story. There are no opportunities to share reasoning so that if the viewer has a difficult choice to make in their life, they can reference back to Stacy's logic for why she made her decision. I mean, the writing here is so lazy that they don't even give us a good reason for why Stacy has to skip the big friend road trip that they've been planning so she can chase her dreams in New York. They even point out how stupid of a plot decision that was.
Why are you being such a dick?
Because you messed up our trip. You couldn't wait one more week?
The road trip? We'll go next year. It's not a big deal.
It's a big deal to me.
Yeah, why couldn't she wait 1 week? The writers couldn't think of anything, like maybe there was a convention that Stacy had to go to that was at the same time of the road trip? She's just ditching her friends for nothing, and we're supposed to see her as an agent of morality who has advice that we should listen to? Remember, this storytelling is a 10 out of 10. Anyway, because of the failure of Mixtape, what we're going to do is talk about a story that's actually good. Now that we know what not to do, it's time to talk about people who are good at storytelling, and for that, let's talk about Resident Evil 9. But before that, some good news and bad news here. The bad news is that, full disclosure, I've not actually completed the game yet, though don't worry, that's not necessary here. And the good news is that because I haven't finished it, I can't really spoil that much. Though I will say that I'm about halfway into it, and I will be spoiling minor things up to the halfway point, which really is not that much. I feel like 0 of my important questions have been answered at the point that I'm at. But in contrast to Mixtape, where we see characters express a relentless amount of selfishness, the story of Resident Evil 9 is a story of self-sacrifice and doing what you can to help those who are in need. So let's talk about the plot. Now, for longtime fans of the series, understand that my experience with Resident Evil is very limited, so please be forgiving if I get stuff incorrect, because it very much seems like this game starts in the middle of a show that has multiple seasons. But for new players, that doesn't matter. It's still fun, and you can still follow what's going on, plus not knowing the full context adds to the mystery. Anyway, Resident Evil 9 is a story where some scientists are trying to develop something called the T-virus. I don't know much about it other than it's supposed to relate to human evolution, and the goal is to find a test subject that's compatible with it, because when you're not compatible, it turns you into a zombie, I guess. The story starts off with our main character Grace, who actually has a flaw unlike our Mixtape characters, and her flaw is that she's very physically weak by comparison to her enemies. The game, by the way, makes you very aware of that.
Miss Ashcroft.
This is perfect. If this game has a large male audience, then this is a chance to get them to empathize with how scary it can be to be a woman and navigate the world with the limitation of being weaker than 50% of the population. Traditionally, video games do a very terrible job at communicating that. Anyway, Grace is an FBI investigator who gets kidnapped while inspecting a crime scene. She then is put into a hospital with a bunch of scary zombies, and her goal is to escape. While this is going on, we're introduced to a second protagonist named Leon, who is from other Resident Evil games, and he's like a 50-year-old badass with a bunch of intentionally cheesy lines.
We can talk, or we can begin your treatment.
It's on the treatment, I hope. You know, I do have a question. When's the last time you brushed your teeth?
The puns and dad jokes in this game are next level.
Hey, can you hear me?
Leon, I've been trying to reach you.
Sorry, I was a little tied up.
So far, my favorite part of Resident Evil 9 is the heavy contrast between each main character. Leon's playthrough is an action game where you parry and use your aim lab skills to defeat your enemies, whereas Grace's scenes are more like a try-not-to-die puzzle game where you have very limited resources. Oh, and also there's this guy Victor, he's the antagonist. I think he has super strength or something. But to be perfectly honest, I hated playing Grace when I started. However, since the developers are smart, they force you to play her first, and once I got used to it, now I love her part of the game because it makes you think. And when it comes to gameplay, the contrast is the frustration of being weak when you play as Grace, followed by getting to kick the crap out of everything as a reward when you play Leon. Also, in comparison to Mixtape's characters that are instantly annoying, Grace and Leon are written to be instantly interesting. Leon is likable not just because he's a strong character, but also because of his numerous self-sacrificing actions.
Wait, you're DSO. That's the counter bioterrorism agency, right?
Take this.
You're sure?
You might need it. Now go. Get out of here.
Okay, Grace, here's the most powerful weapon in the game. Just take it. You need it more than I do. Leon regularly prioritizes the needs of others above his own, but interestingly enough, there are even bigger moments of self-sacrifice from Grace, because while Grace is trapped in a zombie hospital and while she's trying to break out, she meets a blind child. Speaking of good writing skills, this kind of complicates her escape because now she feels like the moral good is not just to rescue herself, but also this child named Emily. By the way, speaking of mystery, who is this girl and why is she in the hospital? Why was she locked in a room? I don't know. That's something that we're supposed to solve as we play the game. But getting to what I found to be the best part so far, at some point while Grace is in the process of breaking out of the hospital, Emily is captured by a monster and taken underground. Now, before I get actually'd by people who played this game and paid close attention to this moment, let's remove the video game logic of Emily having the final key to the front door and Grace not being able to leave without her, because really, if she wanted to leave, she could just blow the lock off the front door. Anyway, Grace has a choice. She can save herself by leaving the hospital immediately and nobody would know that she abandoned the kid, or she can jump down into the abyss and go save Emily. And the inspiring part of this, especially in this anti-natalist hellscape that we call modern times, is that Grace chooses to sacrifice herself to try to save the little girl. Grace, who is incredibly weak, scared, and has very limited information, chooses to prioritize a child that she doesn't know over herself.
I found this. Well done, Emily. Thank you. This is all my fault. I can't just leave her. Oh, God.
Great storytelling. This is one hell of a dilemma, especially considering how many people in the modern day would choose to escape and let that child die. And yes, I know it's a video game, but I also think that people really underestimate how much of an effect the stories that you consume have on you. If they didn't, then DEI freaks wouldn't constantly be trying to change our stories, and on top of that, look at the communities that have the music and the movies and the books that promote trash values instead of hero stories. They aren't doing that great. So let's be clear, if you want people to like and respect you, the times that matter the most are the ones where you have to make difficult choices. And personally, I think that if you took the people who wrote Mixtape and gave them the same moral choice that Grace was given, they would choose to save themselves, considering that they thought it was a moral good to have their characters continuously behave selfishly throughout the entire story. And that's why we don't like people like that. We like people who choose to help others when they're in need, whether they are asked to or not.
That girl just can't stay out of trouble. Sherry, Grace is still here.
The FBI agent.
Yeah.
Is she okay?
No. I've got it covered.
So far in the game, Leon is just constantly saying, here, I'm stronger than you, let me bear the burden and let me deal with the difficulty. And the interesting part is that Grace is basically making the same sacrifice that Leon makes with her when it comes to the child, Emily. With that said, I can't wait to finish this game, but the reason I haven't is because of this next thing. And for that, I'll say that a part of being well socialized is preserving the stories of the past so that the next generation can learn all the lessons from the best stories of each time period. The stories that we tell are incredibly important for transmuting social skills and developing a cultural narrative that allows us to get along with each other. So it kind of pisses me off when companies like Disney have been taking beloved characters from movies like Star Wars and changing them for the worse. Now, I didn't really watch Star Wars as a kid, but I did play a lot of Final Fantasy, and longtime viewers will know that I'm quite upset about the character and story changes that they made during a bait-and-switch remake of Final Fantasy VII. I'm not happy that they did things like take Sid, who was a chain-smoking misogynist with a foul mouth, and Disney-fied him into everyone's happy uncle. And the problem with this is that if they remove the flaws that he had in the original, how is he supposed to learn the error of his ways later in the story? What am I supposed to take away from this as a viewer? Just be perfect? Thanks.
What constitutes a hero? I guess a guy who just does good things and is willing to take chances to help other people. Right? He only wants to help. But not 100% good, because then he's an unrealistic hero. Basically, to me, a hero has to be somebody who will sacrifice or will take great chances to help others, but still have human traits, still not be perfect. When they become perfect, they become dull.
They also censored and Disney-fied Barrett's backstory, which originally was incredibly dark, and they completely ruined the emotional stakes of one of the most popular scenes in gaming history that occurs at the end of the first disc. A scene that was made specifically because one of the creators suffered a major loss, and it was designed to teach the audience how to deal with that. So, I hate the remakes, and I think it's the obligation of the people who are older to preserve the culture and each generation's stories so that future generations can learn the lessons of the past. By the way, that's why all these well-loved stories are being remade like crap or having their protagonists gender swapped. It's to get rid of the good characters for everyone to aspire to so that younger people who didn't grow up with these properties don't learn the moral lessons from them. Or worse, they think they did learn the lessons, but what actually happened is that they got baited and switched, and the story was remade to teach a less valuable lesson so that the morals that they end up with as adults are less good. And by the way, this technique works. It either destroys interest in the property, or in the case of Final Fantasy VII, there are tons of people who defend the remakes, yet none of them can give you reasons for why the story is better. They just say it has good graphics and there's voice acting now. And well, considering that some DEI company called Sweet Baby Inc. and Disney are involved in Square Enix, I think that destroying the story of one of the most revolutionary games of the 1990s and falsely calling it a remake was intentional, especially considering all the random woke shit that was sprinkled throughout the game. They baited you with good graphics as they removed the storytelling principles that made people like the game in the first place.
And FF7 Rebirth tackles its overall approach to story the same way that Remake does, where about 95% of this game is pretty much classic FF7 1-to-1.
What the fuck? Who's paying this guy to lie? Either he's never played Final Fantasy VII before, or he's getting some sort of kickback for saying this. I don't think I've even seen Hassan Piker lie this hard. It is obvious that the remake is a completely different story, even if you get rid of the numerous filler arcs they put in to bloat the game, and the DEI side quests that Sweet Baby Inc. probably told them to add. Oh, of course. He got to meet the director of the remake, that's why he's lying. He wants insider access. What a sellout. Fortunately, what I found out recently is that it's actually possible for fan communities to preserve these titles for the next generation when companies that own the IPs refuse to do that. Finding that out is why I put my playthrough of Resident Evil 9 on pause. Because the reality is that video games are not like movies. For example, Snow White was made almost 100 years ago, and I can still watch it like people did back in the day. And when I was a kid, I watched many movies that were made decades before I was born. But when it comes to video games, yes, Final Fantasy VII was revolutionary at the time it was made, but the reality is that the original version is basically unplayable to young people. Well, that was until recently. These days, production technology has gotten so cheap that fans can now make major upgrades to old games themselves. And a studio called Tsunamods has done that with Final Fantasy VII. And I mean that the amount that they have modernized this game and the effort they have put in to genuinely improve on the original is inspiring. They upgraded the character models, they retranslated the entire script so it's closer to the original Japanese script, they added the ability to turn off random encounters and speed up the game, and most importantly, they voice acted the entire thing. And I mean every single character has a voice, and all of the main characters are voiced by professional actors, so it sounds incredible. These mods are not that hard to access, it only takes a few minutes and they're free. This video here that I've linked in the description will teach you how to do it, and after you watch that video, all you have to do is download these mods that I have on screen, and now you're playing the original Final Fantasy VII the way it should be played. Personally, I'm never going to play this game unmodded again. Also, yes, all of this is legal. You can't use any of the mods unless you own the actual game. Many games these days are modded. And the good news is that if you're a fan of other Final Fantasy games like 8 and 9, they're working on those ones too. However, currently they're doing all this for free. What that means is that fully voice acting Final Fantasy 8 and 9 could take years, but if they had a little bit of funding and could pay the actors, they could finish these voice mods in a few months. Currently they're working on Final Fantasy 9, and if you would like to support that project, I put their Patreon as the second link in the description. And with that said, I think that'll be enough for this video. Thanks for watching, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you in the next one.